good and bad times. It definitely comes in like ebbs and flows. For the right person, you hear a lot of companies say, for the right person, we're always hiring. Definitely on a Monday, you're planning your week, you're planning who you're going to be talking to, which roles are your priority. Just put yourself out there. The right role will come. Don't limit yourself. Don't narrow it down. And most importantly, definitely find the right recruiter.
Are you looking for your next opportunity in the engineering sector, but struggling to find positions to apply for? Are you applying to as many roles as you can, but you're finding responses are slow? Or perhaps you're seeing that you're one of many applicants to a position. What you may not have noticed is that these peaks and dips of opportunities follow a predictable pattern. This is EngineeringPro, and today I'm speaking with Joanna Mainprice, a recruitment consultant in energy transition from our Manchester team. We'll discuss the best and worst times to apply for a job, and how you can plan your search to maximise your chances of being seen by recruiters and landing an interview. Hi Joanna, thank you very much for joining us today on our podcast.
Hello, thank you for having me. Very excited.
So first, before we begin, do you want to just go into a little bit of detail on your experience as a recruiter, how you got into recruitment and how you've kind of got to where you are now?
Yeah, so it's obviously, I feel like most people fall into recruitment. I was looking for something that combined sort of business development and marketing. They were both kind of interest to me. So recruitment is just that. So I ended up I started in recruitment around 2.5 years ago. Worked for a company, Wilmslow, on the oil and gas market. And then it sort of switched to more volume recruitment. Then I recently moved to Manchester in around May. And I thought now's a really good time to look for a new role. Wanted to keep my market. So now I'm supporting oil and energy projects across Europe and Africa within sort of electrical controls, instrumentation. Loving it.
Great, fantastic. So we're talking today we're talking to candidates specifically in today's podcast around whether or not there are good and bad times to look for a job, when there are the best times, when are the worst times, and just kind of how to gauge the market a little bit. So the first question I've got today really is, are there any good or bad times to look for a job?
It's definitely good and bad times. It definitely comes in like ebbs and flows. I think for the right person, you hear a lot of companies say, for the right person, we're always hiring. So I think it's about finding the right opportunity for someone. But yeah, I think there's, external factors. Obviously, there was 2016 oil crash, there's like COVID. So obviously they're not great times to be looking for a job. But typically sort of year to year, there's definitely times when I think you'd probably see more success.
Yeah. So with thinking about that then, before we go into the kind of the better times, just for candidates, when's the worst times to look for a job?
Yeah, I mean, I would say summer is definitely the worst in my experience. People are away and it's such a long period of people being away as well. Typically to make a decision, you're going to need 2 or 3 kind of decision makers, if not more. So trying to navigate that to a time when they're all available is hard, whether you're going through kind of recruits or whether you're not. Compared to like Christmas, it's a set period, we're aware of it. So I definitely say summer's a tricky time. Within sort of oil and gas specifically, you've got to be aware of the projects, what phase they're in. If they're coming to a close, they're going to be fully staffed. So you're probably not going to have as much success unless someone leaves, which obviously it narrows that down quite a lot. So yeah, I'd definitely say probably summer. Christmas is obviously tricky, but I've actually had probably the most success around Christmas time. So I guess, it's just navigating that market and knowing where projects are up to. Yeah.
And do you find that that's regional as well? It changes depending on the regions that you're working in?
Yeah, so I've covered UK markets. I've covered roles kind of across Africa, Europe. So obviously everyone's going to have their different sort of national holidays and things like that. So we did a lot of work in like the Middle East. So obviously if you work in, and it's sort of Ramadan, there's not a lot of recruitment activity. Everyone's kind of off, sort of similar, I guess, to our Christmas. So yeah, I guess it does vary on the region, but typically summer everyone's off, or especially in the Middle East, it's so hot, they're probably not hiring as well. People aren't really working or as eager to work there. So
yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, I can get that it will depend regionally, depends on holidays.
It can be tricky, kind of navigating that job market. I think once you get it, and as well, it comes back to finding the right role for you and, finding something that you are genuinely good fit for. So if you go to someone and you say, I'm currently looking for a role and I've got perfect experience, I know you're having these problems, they're going to find a way to kind of get you in, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, cool. So on the flip side then, we've looked at the worst times. When are the best times in your experience to look for work?
Yeah, I would say, like I said, I've actually had quite a lot of success around Christmas time. And I know a lot of people say it's hard, and a lot of people say, because people are winding down. I know at the moment there's quite a few projects coming to a close, so that definitely enhances that. And there's quite a few projects coming, starting up. But it's just been a good time for me to be able to get in touch with like hiring managers and for candidates to get their applications in before the new year, so that when the new year hits, they can just sort of hit the ground running with their role. They're used to it. So I'd definitely say Christmas is actually quite a good time. Failing that, budget season, people are sort of reassessing kind of their hiring plans around March, April time. So I'd say after the lull of January is another good time to be looking if you do want to kind of get Christmas out of the way and they've got budgets, they're ready to go, then they're on the hiring sprees then.
So we've looked at sort of summer and Christmas and then the start of the year. How is it sort of between spring and autumn time, sort of from April to June and then looking from September to October? How does the market look generally then?
Yeah, I'd say for the rest of the year, it's a lot more consistent. There's always, projects coming to a close and projects starting up and, different project phases and things like that. So it's definitely a lot more consistent around those times of year. There's more consistent opportunity, but then there's also a lot more activities and more people applying to those jobs. But then going kind of into like the weeks as well, specifically, if you are going to be looking for a job, Fridays, Mondays is always a good time to catch a recruiter's attention, especially if it's like a Friday. Like I say, it's similar to how people are wound down at the end of the year, they're wound down for the end of the week. So I'll always have the most success, speaking with hiring managers on a Friday, getting their attention. And to be honest, by Friday, usually people are quite happy to have a bit of a distraction, whether that's an application or someone reaching out to make a connection.
Yeah, that's really interesting, actually. Looking at the times of the week as well. Would you say that as a recruiter, say first thing Monday morning, one of the first things you do is go through the CVs that you've received across the weekend? The reason I ask is, would you say maybe Sunday evening is a good time to apply as well, to be on the top of a pile? Is there kind of a good time to apply? Yeah,
definitely. Evenings are the best times because the first thing, the first thing I was taught in recruitment is go through the CRM, go and find out who's applied to your roles. That's the first thing we do kind of every day, really. But definitely on a Monday, you're planning your week, you're planning who you're going to be talking to, which roles are your priority. So yeah, Sunday evening or kind of over the weekend is good generally. If you're kind of applying midday, it will get picked up, of course, but it will be at a later stage. It's kind of potentially a bit easier to get missed. But yeah, if someone comes in on Monday, they're refreshed, they're making those plans. If you've reached out to them, great, you're top of the list. We're going to reach out to you and have a conversation.
Yeah, brilliant. And then conversely, would you say that Friday afternoon at 4 p.m. is not one of the best times?
Not one of the best times to apply, I would say. Of course, we've got a job to do. So if you do, I'm not saying don't apply on a Friday afternoon. It may not get picked up until kind of the Monday, because Friday you're sort of scrambling, aren't you, to get everything sorted ahead of the week. But yeah, I would say maybe a Friday afternoon. You probably don't want to be applying for jobs on a Friday afternoon anyway. You probably want to be enjoying the weekend. So save it for a Sunday job.
Yes, yeah, that's good general advice that we tend to give as well, is, take care of yourself as well. I mean, the job hunting can be difficult, it is stressful, and taking self-care is an important part of it as well, I think. Yeah, so just thinking a little bit more about your industry and the industries you work in and service, and thinking, we have talked about the best and the worst times, but are there any exceptions to the rule in those industries? Yeah,
so like I say, I think it's about being aware. It all comes back to awareness, the projects, the people that you want to be working with, building those connections. Like I say, if the right person comes along, companies are going to want to hire you. They're going to want to bring you in some capacity. We've seen so many roles where candidates have gone for a certain job. Actually, they're more suited to a role. We've had hiring managers create roles for these people because they're so good. They need to be on the team. So definitely it's always worth kind of always looking into it. I wouldn't be put off, like I say, by a Friday afternoon application or, an application right in the middle of summer. Being aware of the project phase is crucial, because if they're, 80, 90% way through a feed, for example, probably you've got the staff that you need, you've got the contractors that you need, so you're not going to have too much luck. And then again, just don't narrow it down too much as well. So if you are kind of keen to get a role, make sure that you've identified the type of role that you want, and then you can kind of go out to the market. There's always going to be the right role for you, regardless of when you're looking.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And then some other good advice that we tend to give is keeping professional networks up to date, keeping LinkedIn up to date, CVs where they are up to date as well, and staying in touch with recruitment agencies who are aware of these jobs that come through year round as well. Yeah,
and as well, coming back to kind of building up that network, some of the best jobs don't get advertised. We often get a heads up, it's our job to build a relationship with the clients and to build a relationship with the managers. So when we're talking about X role, we'll say, is there anything else coming up? Great. So we'll find that person. We probably already know that person who's suitable for the role because they've built up a connection with us and a relationship with us, and we'll send them through. And then that's great. They don't have to worry about the hiring process. We've sorted it for them. We've sourced that person. So keeping in contact with, whether it is recruiters or hiring managers or, anyone who can help you within a role, having that contact and understanding what's going on and what their next steps are, and always predicting their next steps will be probably quite crucial in you finding the right role, the next role.
Yeah, which makes sense. And actually leads us quite interestingly onto our next question in terms of some of the candidates that you've dealt with. Do you have any kind of examples of candidates that have applied exactly at the right time? Or interestingly, candidates that were perfect but applied at exactly the wrong time, for example? Do you have any kind of success stories?
Yeah, there's a few that spring to mind. We were supporting a client opening up a new office in around 2022. So this was major. We were working with the managing director himself. He'd had like 20 plus years experience on a major sort of EPC. He's moved. We've got a strong relationship with him. So we were building up all of the senior kind of leadership team. From that, we were able to secure someone, not only a role in a sort of senior position, because he'd come into the market at the right time, he ended up getting £30,000 increase per year. So that was definitely a major success. I think since then, he's gone to have 1 or 2 promotions as well. So, he's looking after sort of global operations now. So definitely a success story, and definitely one to kind of be aware of, companies, and are they opening a new office? Because that could be a really exciting opportunity. Under the same breath, we've submitted candidates for that role or for similar roles. It's not been the right time for them, whether they're going through, chartership, or whether their family situation means they can't commute. I saw on LinkedIn actually, about a week or 2 ago, someone that I'd tried so desperately to get into a role had started in that role for that company just like a year and a half later. So obviously that's great for her, and it's great that we'd identified the right candidate for the role. So it definitely comes to kind of finding the right people for the right role. And then additionally, we work on so many major projects for major clients. Sometimes we've had it where we'll submit a candidate to a specific project that's sort of actively hiring. Great for the company, not for the project. And then we'll see actually they've liked the candidate and then they've brought them in on a separate project. So keeping your options open in order to kind of get that perfect role is crucial. But there's definitely been some really great success stories.
Yeah, that's great. And I imagine a lot of it is to do with their technical capabilities, but a lot will be things like soft skills, transferable skills, how they interview, what the client thinks of them at the time as well, that they'll keep in mind as well. So it's always worth maintaining that network and maintaining that connection.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you don't know kind of the hiring team personally, having those strong references before you get the role is so important, because if we can submit you and say, you're going for this role with X company, you've already worked with someone who's now working in the team that the hiring manager is familiar with. If you've got a strong reference, then that's great. People are going to want to interview you and bring you in.
Yeah, I know a lot of people say it's not what you know, it's who you know. And that's not entirely true all of the time, but having those professional connections and being a known face can obviously be an advantage in the industry.
Yeah, definitely, because it allows them not only to say, yes, you're trusted by this person that I know and trust myself, but it proves things like those soft skills. So proving that you're a people person, or I know a lot of clients like people in such a digital world that will go to the other end of the office and talk to someone rather than just sending an email. And I think people would rather build people up and coach them. So yeah, having those softer skills as well, and with that internal reference is key.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that we've talked about in a previous podcast. Technical skills can be taught, but that, like you say, the cultural fit, everything that fits around that isn't something that a company can teach. It's either it works or it doesn't. So that makes a lot of sense. So thank you for that. So just to finish this off then, what tips do you have for candidates who are working in the engineering industry or looking to work in the engineering industry and are struggling to find work at maybe any time or any particular time?
Yeah, it's a question I have, and when you tell people as well you work in oil and gas recruitment, especially like people come around to fix my boiler or my radiators or whatever, and they're like, oh, I'd love to work in oil and gas, but you can't get into it unless you know someone, or you can't get, people think it's really hard to get into. I would say make a list of the kind of companies you want to work for. Don't narrow down your options too much. If you want to work on a specific project, that's fine, but it is going to be harder. Finding the right recruitment consultant, at the end of the day, you've got a job to do. You don't want to be wasting your time looking for roles. Often job specifications are quite vague. So, as a candidate going kind of direct, you maybe don't have access to all of the information. So then you're wasting your time applying to the wrong roles. So finding maybe 2 or 3 recruitment consultants within your discipline, within your niche to assist you will be paramount, because you can get on with your role, you can enjoy your weekends, you don't need to be applying for roles. We'll kind of look for things for you. Again, building up your kind of LinkedIn presence, building up your personal brand is very current, but it's also very slept on. It's something that I've done a lot, and it's something that's kind of hopefully allowed me to kind of shine when, coming for this role, or, even in my previous role, it was kind of quite looked up to. So building up your brand, I guess, from an engineering perspective, posting lots of industry news, sharing, connecting, commenting on people's posts who you want to work for or you want to work with. It's something that I've done before, and it's definitely, it did me quite well. It allowed me to connect with all the people I want to connect with. So those little things, it's not all about kind of applying. There's a lot of external things. So if you are struggling, lean on your network. Don't be afraid to post and say, I'm looking for work at the moment. It's not a bad thing. It allows you to get seen. I mean, how many times have you walked past like a street or a business and you've thought, oh, I didn't know that was there. Oh, that'll come in really handy. Same thing, hiring managers aren't psychic. They don't know you're there. They don't know you're looking until you put yourself out there. So I'd say all the way through, from more junior to more senior, just put yourself out there. The right role will come. Don't limit yourself. Don't narrow it down. And most importantly, definitely find the right recruiter.
Yeah.
They will really help.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that I think anyone could do. I mean, those little things like updating LinkedIn and being active in these places, and that little extra step that will set them apart from just another CV.
Yeah, there's loads that you can do. And I think from a recruiter's perspective as well, when we get a role in, we think, okay, X, Y, and Z person are looking at the moment. This is their situation. I'm going to reach out to them first. So it's just really connecting these dots, like a detective with the red string, and just sort of making sure that you're aware of everything. But then, like I say as well, don't, if you're just constantly applying to projects that come to a close, like you're probably not going to apply to on TCO at the moment because it's very much ramping down. I think the last contractors are finishing in March, so you're not going to get any success there. Whereas if you're going to say Absheron, ramping up massively, so you probably are going to get some success there, or Venus, or those kinds of projects. So being aware of exactly where in a project, even if it's within a stage, like I said, if it's going to the end of a feed or the end of a detailed design, you're not going to be successful. But if it's coming to the end of those phases, you can look into, in a few months' time, it'll be starting a new phase. That could be a great time. But just having that knowledge and that awareness of where projects are up to and not narrowing it down, I think is probably the best.
Yeah. So following these companies, following the projects, making yourself known where you can, and ultimately, like you say, getting in touch with a recruiter who specialises in this industry and has all of this information and knows exactly, and is they're the ones that are getting these job roles first. So
yeah, definitely. We can provide a lot of insight if you go for the right one. I mean, there's a lot of people that come to us who aren't really relevant to our niche or our disciplines. So I'd say it's really important to make sure that the person you reach out to does cover your roles. Like for myself, I cover like instrument, electrical and controls, but I cover the technical engineering side. So it's like feed and detailed design and the kind of front end stages. I won't necessarily cover the construction and the operations phases. So making sure that those people are really relevant to you.
Yeah. That makes sense. Some really good advice for our listeners and our watchers for our podcast. So, Joanna, thank you very much for your time today and your insights.
Thank you. Hopefully it was useful. But it's been good to hang out and chat about kind of the market and good time to look for a job.
This has been Engineering Pro with me, Matt Nicholson, and our guest, Joanna Mainprice, recruitment consultant for energy transition at NES Fircroft. We hope you've enjoyed this episode and found the advice and tips on the best and worst times to look for a job helpful. Remember to subscribe for more episodes and leave a comment with any questions. Perhaps you have helpful tips and tricks of your own to share with our community. You can also register your CV, where Joanna and our team can support you in finding relevant new opportunities at www.nesfircroft.com. Thanks for listening.